my weekly lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified wellbeing expert, and I work with educational institutions and companies, helping them support their well-being. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference in people's lives. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing my friend and expert, Colleen. Colleen, so great to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you so much, Jasmine. I'm glad to be here.
No, thank you. And can you tell us who you are and what you do?
I'm a social worker. I've worked a lot with addiction, and I also work in the field of children and mental health. So I kind of have a broad spectrum. I mainly focus on the cognitive behavior therapy model, so CBT. It's kind of all
Amazing.
what I'm using.
Amazing. Thank you. And that's actually the topic you chose today, didn't you? The CBT Model of Emotions. Is there any reason you chose this topic to talk about today?
I chose this because I feel like it can be used in a lot of areas, as well as not just the model itself, but expanding on it can also help you use it in more areas than as it's meant to. I feel like you can expand on it and increase the value you can get from the model.
Yes, yes. I'm very excited to hear more about this. Hi, David. How are you doing? And hi to everybody who's joining. Please feel free to write any questions or comments in the chat. We always like hearing from you. So, Colleen, now let's get back to basics. Can you explain what is the CBT model of emotions?
Okay, CBT is the cognitive behavioral therapy. So, what a lot of it is focused on is your thinking, your cognitive behavior, and then focusing on how you can change that thinking in turn to change your behavior. So, taking away the negative and twisting it into a positive. When you use the CBT model of emotions, you're using the focus of thoughts equaling emotions, which in turn change to behavior. So, we'll always determine what our thoughts are and then what emotions come from those thoughts,
Yeah.
how those emotions and thoughts lead to specific behaviors. And in using this model, you can determine these were the negative thoughts I had. How can I change that? How can I look at this in a more positive perspective? And
Oh,
that's the
wow.
main concept of the model.
Well, let's just say hi to Mimi. Hi, Mimi. Lovely to have you here. And hello, Farouk. Lovely to have you here too. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're always happy to hear your opinions and thoughts as well. So, Colleen, okay, so it's all about thought behavior. So being aware of your thoughts. So can you give like an example? So
You
if
can use it in regards to your thoughts of what someone else is saying or doing, or about yourself, or about
yeah,
objects around. So I actually have a couple examples that I had planned so that I can share.
amazing.
So one
Okay.
of them is about someone else. If he or she, for example, you think they're mad at you, you think the individual's mad at you, they don't like you anymore.
Oh,
So
yes,
you're
yes.
feeling like anxious or frustrated, like what's going on? What did I do? Why doesn't she like me?
So you're just assuming this, yeah? This is just an assumption.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where we're going to go back to that. A lot of these are just assumptions. So what we're
Okay.
doing is our initial thoughts, which again are assumptions because we don't know. We didn't ask that person, and I'll get into that in.
Please do. This is so important. I'm so excited. Let me just say hi to Susan. Hi, lovely to have you here. Yes, sorry, carry on, Colleen. So,
So
yeah,
feelings would be anxious or frustrated. Obviously, there's more than that in this example. Those are the ones I identified, and then your behavior could vary. You could stop contacting that person. You could ignore that person when they contact you back, if they contact you.
wow.
You could act angry towards them in that moment or later. So I give
Yeah,
multiple scenarios because it can end up that way. It depends how you respond to those emotions, whether you respond in a negative way, a positive way, or neutral. And in this case, I picked this example on purpose because you also have a situation that leads to the thoughts. I left that out initially
yes, I
because
can.
it's, yeah,
Yeah,
focused on the triangle. So it's more the
okay.
thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. However,
Yeah,
some kind of situation or something has to occur to cause that thought. So
exactly.
it could have been your friend walked by and didn't say anything to you. You waved and they didn't catch your wave. Maybe didn't you thought they were ignoring you, or they're talking to other people, but then they didn't talk to you. So
Yeah,
different reasons you may feel that way, but honestly, maybe they just didn't see you, or you never really know what's going on. They could be in thoughts and you're focused on what they're doing. So that's where you use this to look back at it, and you can get your new thought, new feeling, and new behavior.
Okay.
So my new thought would be like, okay, maybe she's super into her work. Maybe she didn't see me right now because she's looking at her phone, or she's just so focused on getting where she needs to be because she's in a hurry. My thought is, I hope she's, okay. I hope she's going to make it to her appointment. I'm fine. I'm content.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. So basically, something happens and I interpret it in a way that's sort of against me. Like maybe, so something happens, somebody doesn't say hello to me. So I think maybe I've done something wrong. What have
Yeah.
I done wrong? But when do you change that thought? In the moment, when do you
The
change the thought?
goal is to eventually reduce or eliminate the negative thoughts. However, to catch it. In the beginning, it's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be practice. So you're going to realize, after the fact, okay, and you can go back and think about it. That's the technique they'll typically use initially. But once you start recognizing and realizing the negative thoughts, you'll kind of train your brain to automatically think about the positive ones. It takes some time. Humans are wired to think negatively.
Yes.
There's ways to fix that and change that so that we can, keep those negative thoughts out and keep it positive. And this is one of the techniques.
This is brilliant. I love this. Yeah, carry on. Sorry to keep interrupting you.
You're good. So that was the example about someone else. And I have if you're thinking about yourself. So I would say I'm such a failure. I never do anything right. That would be my thought.
Okay.
So I'm feeling depressed, maybe guilty, depending on the situation, anger towards myself. Like, why am I always messing up? All those thoughts are kind of processed in my head. So depending on the scenario, depending on how you respond to anger, possibly clenching your fists, making an angry sound, maybe isolating yourself, different things like that. So it really depends on the person, but that's a basic example.
And one thought can lead to the next thought, the next thought. So you can literally spiral. So first of all, I'm feeling, oh, that person doesn't like me. And then maybe that could lead to feeling angry or worthless, or it can just spiral to another thought, and you could sort of go down and down and down.
Yes.
Consumed in your thoughts. Okay.
It can either be a negative cycle or a positive cycle.
Yes.
If you choose for your behavior to be negative and then your next thought continues to be negative, you're going to go back in that negative cycle. If you can switch that behavior and change your thinking to a positive thought, it'll switch the cycle. So when they when they look at it as a triangle, they'll start at the top and then have you go from thoughts to feelings, behavior. So they show it that it's a pattern that never ends.
Wow. Oh, that's just, even knowing about this is just life-changing, isn't it? And Susan says, thank you, Jasmine. So happy to be here. Thank you so much, Susan. I love this too. Yeah, me too. And negativity magnifies quickly. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I agree. And it's funny because it all makes sense and it's so logical, isn't it? And so simple, actually. But just talking about it just sort of reinforces that awareness, doesn't it? So we can catch ourselves even more often.
Excuse me. Yes.
So yeah, carry on.
Basically, with that example, I just wanted to say, when you think about it again, there could be multiple situations. So I didn't give a situation. If you're thinking I'm such a failure, I don't do anything right, it could have been because you made a mistake or you didn't pass a test or assessment.
Yes.
Made a plan that fell through. So in this case, for some of those examples, you may be able to fix that. You may be able to be like, what went wrong, so that I can actually make the event happen, so that I can, go back and take the test and pass it. So you can use these not just to change your thinking, but to also look back on what did I do with that behavior and how can I change it to get the response that I want.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's amazing how, and it does take time to change that, doesn't it? Because I guess the first step is realizing, oh, how come sometimes you realize it later. Oh, I reacted very negatively about that situation. But to catch it in the moment, I guess that's when you're just about to make that change, aren't you?
Yes.
You've nearly got the change when you like, hang on a minute, no, I'm not going to think like this. I mean, it is definitely a process.
Yes.
But, yeah.
That's between the thoughts and emotions. So a lot of the time when I speak on this, I'll actually put it in a line of line. So there'll be the rectangle with thoughts, which leading with an arrow to the feelings and emotions, and then which leads to the behaviors. So when I introduce it, I'll also add that it's not necessarily just the thoughts, because it has to come from a situation. So your thoughts are actually the initial start based on your own actions or someone else's, the actions of something. So really there's that piece that we don't talk about in the beginning. So your thoughts are there, but your thoughts had to come from something. So it's an action of yours or someone else's, which in turn brings those thoughts.
There's always an action
there. Yes, you'll think of emotions and or feelings, which will make your next behavior or action, depending on how you respond to that.
I guess if you catch that thought immediately, or even before you start thinking that thought, then you're going to obviously stop the feeling and the behavior, aren't you? The earlier you stop this,
yes,
then you avoid this cycle. Yeah.
Yes, the goal is to figure out what's going on, use your coping skills before you get to those negative emotions. However, if you reach the negative emotions, there's still the possibility of using coping skills before the negative behaviors or the potential behaviors that could have negative consequences occur.
Exactly, because then you just, oh my God, you just go round and round and round.
Yes.
It's terrifying when you think about it, where you can be in this cycle and just not even know it. And that's your life. That is your life cycle. It's this awareness is so, so important, isn't it? I mean, the work that you do, Colleen, is just, I mean, awareness, full stop, is just life-changing, isn't it? And it can be scary and uncomfortable, but if we don't do this work, and I really believe we've all got work to do, and if we don't do it,
yes, if you don't, excuse me, if you don't identify your emotions and know how to identify them, then you're not going to be able to change your behaviors. So without being able to use this process, it would be very challenging to get rid of those negative behaviors without being able to identify why it's happening. What's causing.
That's what I was going to say. So what would be, imagine you're working with somebody who, or people that someone's listening, they've never done this, they've never used the model, they've never done any sort of coaching, therapy or anything, but they have noticed that something's not right in their behavior and everything, and their life's being affected by this. Like, what would you say? Like, what is the first thing to do? The simple thing that people can do at home? Maybe they can't afford a therapist, or they just haven't got access. Like, what would you say is the first thing to do?
Identify what happened that led to your emotions and behavior. So I've also used the ABC model, which is separate from this, but where you on antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. So
what's this one?
Happened before, behavior in the middle, and then consequences, what happened after. So that'll help you determine, okay, this was my behavior, and then at this point, these were my emotions. So you can use the antecedent because that's the situation in the term of CBT. And then from there, what was your thoughts? Well, this is what happened. So what was I thinking at that time? It kind of gives you a process to look at where you were, to use that information to hopefully remember in your head what your thoughts were, rather than being like, oh, I think I thought that, so that it's more accurate. However, it's not 100% because you can't always remember what you're thinking, but it gives you more of a visual. Some people require a visual or work better with a visual, so I always offer that option. If you can picture it in your head, that works as well too. But
picture what in your head? The situation.
Yes, what happened before, and then what happened after, how you responded, because that's your behavior.
Right. Okay.
Then you just have to determine the emotions, and from there, you can see what you did it that way, and if you want to change it in any way to make a different response next time.
So are you thinking about like big situations, or could this just be a small situation that, maybe somebody overreacted or something? Or are you talking about like big serious things where maybe you just lost it and you were so angry and caused, a lot of problems? Or can it be any Like, how serious does it have to be?
It can be anything, big or small. Another example is like when you're walking in the shopping center and somebody knocks into you.
Okay.
Little, your thought process could automatically be like, they don't like me. Why are they doing that? Or, okay, they just, didn't see me, depending on which way you look at it. So that's a really simple one. And
yes.
then,
What about anger? What about if you get angry, something bangs into you and you're like, oh, right, da, 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 and you just get so angry? Because I see this a lot with my clients. Yeah.
I've used this when I teach anger as well, but there's also an anger cycle and an aggression cycle, an intensity
Right.
cycle. So that has its own cycles,
Okay.
but use
Wow.
help identify it. So when you're in the anger cycle, you can see, okay, what situation caused me to have the feeling of anger? And then you can go back and be like, what was I thinking prior to feeling that way?
Yes.
Determine how you're going to respond or why you responded in the way you did if it already happened. And again, trying to focus on coping skills, catching it between the thoughts and emotions rather than
Yes.
after that negative behavior happens.
Yeah. So it's really, so I'm sensing that there's a lot of questioning here, a lot of asking yourself these questions to, like you said, self-identify. That seems to be the key here.
Yes.
So spending time by yourself to do this.
Excuse me, I called. Yes, you can work with someone else if you feel comfortable, even if it's not a professional. Some people confide in, family or friends, anyone that they feel comfortable speaking with. As long as you feel like that person can be a support and not hinder you, then that's great as well. You're more able, if some people's able to do their own, that's fine too.
You're right. It's so important to find the right person because otherwise it could make things worse. Hi, Abdul Malik. How you doing? Welcome. No, it's so interesting, Colleen. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of models and cycles. So the first thing is, so when you realize something's not right, then take a step back out of the situation and then ask yourself these questions.
Yes, you can decipher the triangle, for example, is one of the phrases they use. You have to decipher the thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So you're interpreting each area or point on the triangle, trying to figure out what happened, why it occurred, in the relationship to the other one. So what were my thoughts?
Oh.
How did that relate to the emotions I had? And how did those lead to that behavior?
Oh, this is brilliant. Oh, these are brilliant questions. After the live, if you don't mind writing these questions on the post. That'd be amazing. Thanks. And hello to your cats as well.
Yeah, in the background there.
Just these simple questions to help you connect the dots in your own thoughts, feelings, and behavior, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Yeah.
There's actually a process that they recommend. I've taught this in different ways. The one that they focus on with using the CBT model has 3 steps when you're working on deciphering it. And you actually start with the emotions before the thoughts, because it's easier to identify emotions than it is to identify thoughts. So you want to validate your emotions, again, needing to be able to identify them. So you have to first be able to work on identifying your emotions before you can utilize this process. So it's
really?
that thing.
Well, what do you mean? Just in general, knowing how you're feeling, or you mean when you're feeling something that's going to evoke a certain behavior?
Yes, depending on your feelings, also because especially for anger, with that example, it's a secondary emotion. There's usually a lot of emotions hidden underneath. So if I'm angry, am I really just angry, or am I angry at all, or am I jealous that she got that and I didn't? Or, there's also happy emotions that can go with anger, but that's totally separate from this as well. But yeah, it's where you have to determine what emotions am I really feeling, because if you say it's anger and it's not, or it's not just anger, then you're not going to be able to address the problem completely.
Wow. That's really interesting, actually. And that's so important to say, isn't it? That, and probably most of the time we are feeling more than one emotion. It's very rarely just one emotion, isn't it? Like, I know even with myself, when I like, since coaching and everything, I do identify my emotions, and there's normally a few, like there's normally one, you process it, and then there's another one waiting and then another one. It's like, oh, how many emotions are there?
Yeah, and with anger, it can be very confusing because that's the first thing you go to. A lot of the times It's just because you have a lot of them same body sensations that you would with the other emotions, but it's easier to identify anger than jealousy or even fear sometimes. Some of them less typical emotions that you don't always feel.
Wow. And that's a whole skill in itself, just identifying your emotions, isn't it? I mean, and and even like I do talk sometimes about emotional awareness, and sometimes, we don't even have the language to identify our emotions, because normally we're just, when we talk, how are you? I'm fine, I'm good, I'm bad. That's it. We don't always talk about them, do we? On a basic level anyway. So this can be difficult to do alone if you don't have training or so sorry, Colleen. So that's brilliant. Okay, so there's so much to know about this.
When you're looking at the triangle and you're trying to figure out, why this occurred or what is the best way to respond to it, you'll focus on validating those emotions. So even if you're not really happy with them, even if they're, are a negative emotion, that's okay. That's still natural. So you want to validate it. You want to make sure, okay, I accept this. This is what's really happening. And I have control. It doesn't. If you don't validate it, if you allow the emotions to take control of you, sometimes that isn't going to help you in the long run, and it could cause the negative responses as well, because that anger is taking over. You're not choosing your own response. You're using the emotion to choose your response for you.
Wow. Oh yes. So you've said embrace your emotions and be compassionate with them.
Yes. Don't be worried to share them. Don't dismiss them. Don't say, oh, okay, I'm fine. I'm not angry. Actually, ensure that you express them. If you hold it in, eventually it'll come out one way.
Yeah, exactly. It comes out. Yeah. So actually, that is a very good point. You can't suppress them forever. And if you try to suppress them, like you said, they'll come out in ways where probably will get you into trouble.
Yes, a lot of the time, especially with anger, it does. It's usually more of a physical response. Then again, some people it'll come out in crying. They call it the ticking time bomb. Eventually, everything's going to come out. You're going to explode. So whether it be in a physical way, whether it be emotional tears, everyone has their own way of it coming out. But then that thing comes out.
It totally makes sense, doesn't it? If you suppress, of course it's going to bubble up, and there's only so much we can take. So I guess identifying them as they come up.
Yeah, so that's when those little situations can cause larger responses, because you've been building up. So, okay, now I stubbed my toe. I'm going to really get frustrated and irate. But honestly, it's because everything else has been building up, and that was kind of the tip of the iceberg, if you'd say.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so important. But no, I love what you were saying. And so with the CBT model, it sounds like there's a lot of points in there similar to coaching techniques as well. But it sounds like this model can be useful for anyone.
Yes. I feel like it can be used for adults and children. It can be used kind of if you're an adult who's focusing on a child, see why did you respond a certain way? Or why do you believe the child responded that way to you? Okay, this was the situation. I had this action. These were the child's responses. Maybe what could have been done differently so the child felt more comfortable, or A, B, and C, depending on the situation. So you can use it in that aspect too, because not necessarily all young children are going to be able to express that. And you may not know 100%, but it may help you to understand how that particular child processes things, or how, you may want to approach them a little differently because of the way they respond.
Amazing. It's all about the awareness again, and effective communication.
Yes. Communication. Excuse me, not communicating can cause issues, as I said with the first example. Your friend didn't see you, you thought she ignored you. You're never really sure if you don't have that communication.
Of course. And do you think if maybe you are reacting like that, you thought somebody ignored you, but they didn't, is there something deeper going on there? Like maybe you have really low self-esteem, or something happened when you were younger and you didn't address it. There might be a core wound there. So you're seeing things differently because of what happened in your past as well?
That could be it as well. Depending on your situation and what happened, some people will have experiences as a child that can affect how they
Yeah.
think or feel about certain things. Could also be the way they were raised, their environment, just the views, which everyone has their own views, and that's totally
Yes. Oh, that as well. Yeah.
they interpret it. So
Yeah.
your
So,
interpretation of your own views.
so would you say, like, I know the CBT is useful, can be useful for anybody, but do you think it's important for everybody to have a look at it as well, even if they're not struggling with something, just to bring them awareness?
Yes, CBT can be used again to help with thinking. So even if you're not struggling, we all have negative thoughts because again, that's naturally.
Yes.
So focusing on that cognitive piece and how the cognition and what you can do to increase your cognition can also help without having any type of diagnosis or any type of services required or supports needed. Because again, it's still there to help you increase your awareness and with emotions. Everyone can always work on getting those positive emotions to come out more. So I feel like it's useful for anybody in any situation.
Definitely. And just educating ourselves on this. So for example, so you have that negative thought, and then if you catch yourself before you have the feeling, you could possibly ask, is this true? Do I actually have all the facts here, or am I assuming? I don't know
Yeah.
if that could be a good question. That's what I sometimes ask myself, am I assuming? Is this an assumption, or is this true?
No, you're exactly right. That's the kind of the second step in looking at the triangle. Once you validate the emotions, you challenge the
Okay.
thought. So a lot of it is assumptions or irrational beliefs. Those thoughts where we're kind of exaggerating what we're thinking. There's cognitive distortion is one of the terms they use for that.
Okay.
Excuse me. So when you're challenging thoughts, yes, you want to make, is that an assumption? Is it true? Uh, did And then you can also be like, does that thought really make sense based on the action, or it
Oh, yes.
just exaggerating it? Am I
Yes.
distorting it?
Yes. And sometimes when you're in that moment, it's very hard to rationalize it like that. Sometimes, yeah, you might have to step out and do it later and then go back, because
Yes.
I
And
guess it depends.
sometimes, sorry, if it's instinct, if it's, again, your nature, it can be harder to challenge. Someone might be used to it, it's their instinct. It may feel like they're confused, it's not in the truth doing it, but that's where, we learn to change it. If we're unable to challenge our own thoughts, then that's where being unable to change those behaviors can come into play. You have to be willing to adjust and adapt and accept change. Also accept when you can't change things so that it does help you get through the process.
Well, so there's the three. So what are number one?
The third would be new behaviors. So the first one's validating emotions, and
Okay.
after that, challenging the thoughts
Yeah.
and trying the new behavior. Once you determine the new thought, after you challenge the negative thought and you come up with the positive thought, you can try a new behavior based on that.
So a new behavior, what do you mean? Instead of overreacting?
Yeah. So in the example where your friend was, you thought your friend was mad at you or ignoring you,
Yeah.
that made you upset, and you decided to ignore them in response.
Okay.
You go back and look at it. Okay, well, maybe she was having a rough day. Maybe she's those positive thoughts we were thinking at, and challenge it, and then try a new behavior, like waving at your friend,
I
calling her,
see.
texting her, "Hey, you okay? I saw you. You didn't say anything. What's up?" Kind of, responding in that way, some compassion, or maybe you're
Yes.
content with it, and then later on you're like, "Oh yeah, I saw you, but you looked really busy," and you just go on with that. So you take it more in a neutral or positive way, more focused
Amazing.
on your friend.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Colleen, it's so interesting. And I feel like just can't learn this enough. And, I just think it's so beneficial for everybody out there. And is there anything else you would like to say before we go? Like, how can people find you? And if there's any other message?
Yes. So currently you can look on LinkedIn and locate me under my profile at this time. So it's Colleen Norton, as you see on the screen, and I'm open to any connections, any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you so much, Colleen. And thank you so much for everybody who joined. Colleen will be writing just those steps in on the comments. If you can, Colleen, that would be amazing.
Yes.
And yes, if you have any comments, questions, please reach out to me or Colleen. And thank you so much, Colleen. And I will see everybody next week with another guest.